Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reader's Intrigue, where authors are going to read the first chapter of their book so that we can be intrigued and maybe find a new book to read. Get comfy, get cozy. Let's listen.
Hello, my name is Brandon Hargraves, and I am a youth pastor out of Puyallup, Washington, where I live with my wife India and my son Zealand. We spend most of our time just finding ways to help the community as well as just spending time with family. And I wrote this first book during the pandemic, whereas I was a Christian for a lot of my life. I grew up with all sorts of different kinds of self-help books for all sorts of people to improve their lives on practical means. And the problem I noticed was that only so many people will read that kind of book. It reaches a very certain specific grouping of people, and oftentimes the people who really need help are ignored because they're not going to pick up these kinds of books. So having grown up with Tolkien, Sanderson, Robert Jordan, and having a love for fantasy as well as people, I decided there needs to be a change here. So I wrote my first book, Reflection, where people struggle with these issues of identity, depression, and trauma, but it also gives the reader an outlet to begin their practical journey of getting healing. My new book is called Insurrection. It is the second book in the series of the White Council, and this book happens a year after the fateful events in the first book, and our main character, Dawn, thanks to intense training, has honed her skills as a monster hunter. When political insurgency threatens violence in the Citadel, Dawn has to decide which side of the divide she stands on, and she walks a tightrope between her duty to the White Council and her sanctity for all life, and quickly realizes that sometimes the trouble of the world are too much for just one person to handle on their own. So I hope you enjoy. This is the first chapter of Insurrection, a White Council novel.
Prologue. Zen surveyed the dark Citadel square for any indications of peacekeepers. All he could discern was the statue of the Eternal Dragon towering over the core of the Midtown district. That was one good aspect about the Outriders terrorizing the city. The Sacred Order had shifted primarily to the Temple district to watch over the White Council. Only peacekeepers remained to oppose his operations. "The cases of elf dust are hidden in that building," Zen's nephew, Caden, pointed to a raggedy-looking stone building with boards over its windows. "Not another soul in there." "Ridiculous," Zen grunted, shaking his head and chuckling under his breath. Caden cocked his head. "Wait, you're serious? Come on, Caden, put yourself into the mind of a peacekeeper. What is the first building you would search if you were looking for dealers in the city?" Caden looked down towards his feet. "Probably the one that looked abandoned, right?" Zen nodded. "Set up the rest of our guys as archers in the windows of each building in the square, in the abandoned building too, and move the elf dust into a trash container in that alley." Caden saluted and jogged back into the abandoned building. It wasn't the boy's fault. He just didn't know better. That was Zen's job, as he had promised himself, not to teach him the rules of his trade or the ins and outs of the Citadel underground. You couldn't prepare a person for every possibility in Zen's chosen lifestyle. It was his job to teach Caden how to think. Another man exited one of the other surrounding structures, sliding a sword back into its sheath. Zen's right-hand man, Declan, had come to Midtown a few hours earlier to vacate some rooms for their operation. Zen could see the sleep still in the corners of the man's eyes. The blout had passed out.
"Everything's good on my end, Z,"
Declan barked. For Foss's sake, his voice was loud. "Quiet!" Zen shouted in a whispered tone. "You do realize what we're doing, right?"
"Course I do,"
Declan bellowed, plopping onto the dragon statue's giant foot.
"I am covering for you. Glad to be of assistance. Don't know what you'd do without me."
Zen scowled at the man, but turned away, trying to ignore him. Declan cleared his throat. Zen groaned. "You will get your payment once the job is finished, Declan. Not a minute sooner. If I don't have success, then neither will you."
"Ah,"
Declan said.
We've known each other for a long time, Zen. I know you're good for the money. I just feel like you should cut your losses tonight. These guys are dangerous.
We have to do this, Zen said. We've been bumbling around the underworld for too long. Our product is great, and it's time the world knows it.
This has nothing to do with the elf dust, Declan said. Do you even know why they want it? What's their plan? Why are they willing to pay so much? I feel like you rushed into this, Z.
4 of Zen's lackeys entered the dimly lit square, with bows engraved with a carving of a snake gripped tightly in their hands. They murmured softly about the red moon illuminating the city.
Your men think this whole night is a bad omen.
Silly superstitions, Zen scoffed. They also believe fog allows goblins to teleport into their closets. Should we halt our plans because of some bad weather?
If the weather's bad enough.
The archers established themselves in the windows, leaving Zen by the statue with Declan and Caden. So many varied cultures had made their mark on the Citadel in his time there. Zen didn't know much of what the historians taught, but the White Council had managed to grow the Citadel into a melting pot that united all 4 of the White Islands. It was a remarkable accomplishment. Whistles echoed through the peaceful city, bizarre sounds disguised as a bird's call. Declan drew his sword, sending a quiver through Zen's spine. 3 masked men passed into the city square, donning midnight black coats. Their masks covered their entire face. Zen couldn't even deduce the color of their skin.
Which one of you is Zen Stormrend?
The man in the center asked in an intense, hushed tone. Zen stepped forward, not recognizing the man's voice. His initial contact had been a woman.
Good.
The man continued.
You 3 can grab the product and follow us to the meeting place.
This is the agreed-upon meeting place, Zen said, waving a comforting hand at Declan, urging him to sheath his sword. You think we would do business here in the street with your goons watching over us, the man said, gesturing up at the surrounding windows. You must earn your trust with us, or you can walk away without payment. Declan shot Zen a knowing glance. Zen closed his eyes, then nodded. Caden grabbed the elf dust.
Smart man, the buyer said. Tell your watchers to stay back. If I believe they are following us, things will not go well for you tonight.
Zen nodded, lobbing a fist up in the air. Caden departed the alley with 2 cases in his hands, and the masked buyer led the 3 of them away from the Eternal Dragon. They walked until Zen was convinced his henchmen wouldn't even be able to hear them scream. And then they walked more. The red moon reflected off the silky black coats of the buyers. Outriders, his contact had called them. Zen didn't exactly agree with their philosophy, but this was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. He would do whatever was required in order to do business on this level. The masked men led Zen and his crew into a substantial brick building at the edge of the Midtown district. It was a large warehouse that used to operate as a clothing distributor for the Citadel. Now, apparently, it was the front for a criminal underworld. On the inside, the storehouse was abandoned. Thank the Maker didn't look abandoned from the outside. Caden would never have let Zen hear the end of it. The farther they proceeded into the building, the more people materialized in the shadows. Every one of them wore the same masks as the men who had brought them there. Just a blank slate, a circle with a line through it stamped on the cheek. The mask wasn't what drew Zen's attention, though. These people didn't wear the same silky black coats, but instead donned chainmail with beautiful steel swords. The more Zen inspected the hallways of the building, the more people he spotted, some of them lurking deep in the shadows with short bows, ready to make quick work of their meeting. Their escorts led them through a pair of wide oak doors into a giant room at the center of the facility. A narrow balcony lined the edges of the room, an archer positioned every few feet with arrows already nocked. Someone stood in the center of the room encircled by soldiers wielding spears. Zen glanced over to Declan, who peered back and forth between the 2 doors at either side of the room. Zen noted the crates stacked along each wall. His product might end up in one of those crates soon. The person in the center grunted. Abruptly, they snapped their fingers and the spearmen dashed around Zen's crew, surrounding them on each side. Declan was the first to draw his blade, but Zen quickly followed suit. The boss laughed in a feminine voice. This voice Zen recognized. She quickly regained her composure. I would like to see the product I'm purchasing. I think we're entitled to some answers first, Zen said, fixing his eyes on the spearman. We had agreed on a meeting location. I feel like I'm on the back foot, and I don't like that. You feel like you're on the back foot? The woman snickered. Because you are on the back foot. In a new relationship like ours, one can never be too careful. We only do business with organizations we trust, and you have yet to prove yourself. Now please don't make me ask again. Zen and Declan looked at each other before Zen motioned to Caden. The boy stepped forward and laid the cases of elf dust at the woman's feet. She shooed him away and opened the cases, revealing the explosive powder Zen had invented. A single spark and the bright green dust would level the entire building. The woman howled a burst of laughter, slamming the cases closed. And this stuff is as powerful as you say? Zen nodded. With enough of this stuff, you could take down the entire Citadel. The woman stepped forward and extended out a hand to Zen. We are going to go far, you and I. Tarek will be pleased. I believe this is the beginning of a new age. Our plans can final... As Zen squeezed the woman's hand, a splatter of blood sprayed out of her mouth onto his cheek. Zen gawked as she tried to cough, but he could only hear a gurgle as she choked on the blood. Her hand slipped from his grip as she crashed to the floor, an arrow piercing through her neck. Zen's heart dropped, bile threatening his throat. He turned to call out to Declan, but the soldier already fended off the surrounding spearmen with his blade. Zen scrambled to Caden as one of the soldiers moved toward him with rage in his eyes. But another arrow flew into the soldier's back, and he collapsed lifelessly onto Zen's young nephew. He snatched Caden by the collar and yanked him back behind a stack of crates as the archers from above rained down a barrage of arrows at his crew. What is happening? Caden sobbed, jerking his head down to his chest. This isn't how it was supposed to go! Zen shouted, pressed up tight against the crate. An arrow erupted through the wood an inch from his head. Wood splintered out and stung at his neck. He peered over the crate where all the spearmen had been cut down by Declan. Curses, this guy was incredible. Not a day of formal training in combat, but he still outclassed any soldier Zen had ever seen. Declan had grabbed the case of elf dust and used it to deflect arrows away from his body. Declan! Zen yelled. Let's go! He grabbed Caden by the shirt and yanked him to his feet, tossing him towards the door they came in through. Declan followed close behind, blocking arrows as they fired at them. Zen looked as Declan closed the oak doors to see one of the archers falling from the balcony and smashing to the ground below, a masked swordsman staring at them from amid the carnage. Nobody ever listens to Declan, Declan said, fiddling with the elf dust leaking from the beat-up case he had used as a shield. Zen opened his mouth to respond, but the smell of blood promptly silenced him. He turned around to see the dismembered bodies of their buyer's henchmen slaughtered throughout the hallway. Caden released the contents of his stomach on the closest wall. Zen couldn't blame the boy. Peacekeepers? Declan asked as he crept farther into the clearing. No, Zen said. Peacekeepers are protectors of the peace, not butchers. Without another word, Zen's crew sprinted back through the facility. Red moonlight glared off the crimson puddles pooling on the floor. Zen could hear his footsteps squish under each step, tracking the remains of the deceased across the storehouse. He ran at the back of the pack so he could keep his eyes on Caden. The boy deserved more, deserved better. After watching his parents die from the great sickness, he deserved to live a long life. He didn't deserve to die here, in this forsaken place. Zen ran into Declan as the man stopped in his tracks. Just ahead, a masked man stood in the way with a sword in his hand, drops of red dripping from the tip of the blade. Just a single man. How could he cause this much trouble? Let us through, Declan commanded, and you will live. The swordsman didn't answer. We won't mention this to anyone. No one will seek retribution for what has happened here today. The swordsman reached behind his back and unclipped a bow from his person, tossing it to Zen's feet. Carvings of snakes slithered up the shaft between splatters of blood. If bloodshed is what you wish, Declan said, tossing the case of elf dust to the side, then I will oblige. Declan charged forward, gripping his sword in both hands. Caden screamed, charging in after him. Zen reached to pull him back, but he was too late. Declan swung his blade downwards at the swordman's shoulder, but he quickly ducked beneath the steel, slashing at Caden, who was close behind. Caden reacted slowly, barely able to get his weapon up to deflect the attack. Zen leapt forward in an attempt to overwhelm the swordsman. A whirlwind of steel blew through the hallway as the swordsman bounced between the three fighters. He moved precisely, never exerting more energy than needed. Their blades grazed within inches of his thinly covered skin. The man had done all this wearing nothing but a cloth shirt and trousers. Swiftly, the swordsman blocked an attack from Declan while kicking Zen away, Zen's sword flying out of his hands. Like a flash of lightning, he ducked beneath Caden's blade and plunged his own into the boy's stomach. One strong jerk and the swordsman was squared off with Declan alone. Declan slashed at the stranger in a barrage of heavy strikes. He screamed as steel smashed against steel, sparks flying off of their weapons with each blow. Zen gnashed his teeth, climbing back to his feet and clawing for his blade across the hall. Once he finally grasped the handle, he turned to see the swordsman charge forward, slamming his shoulder into Declan's body. He turned hastily and sliced through Declan's hand, following up with a strike through his chest. Zen fell to his knees. His best friend and his nephew lay in their own blood on the floor in front of him. He led them into this. He didn't listen to Declan. He infected Caden with this life. This was his fault. Why? Zen looked up at the swordsman with tears in his eyes as he approached. Why? The swordsman rested his blade against Zen's neck. I protect the ones I love. Zen sobbed uncontrollably. Not for his own life, no. For his life wasn't worth the tears. He cried for the lives of everyone he knew. He killed them all. The blade fell against Zen's neck.
That was Insurrection, the first chapter of the second book in the White Council series. If you are interested in any way, you can find both of my books anywhere that sells books online, or if you wanted to listen to it through audiobook version, it is also available on Audible. I also have an author page on Amazon that is easy to find everything that you're looking for if you go there. Brandon Hargraves, Insurrection, a White Council novel. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you again to the amazing author that read us a story. And be sure to check out all the other amazing shows on RB Media. Till next time. Bye.